I'll tell you in a minute why I've got all this salt up here. But for those of you who know me very well, you will know I'm a saltaholic. And I'm not even seeking any help. I like my salt. So, my husband has been preaching a series of sermons on living to serve. And he asked me today if I would continue on the living to serve by serving our world. And there's a very special reason why he asked me to do that, and that is because my husband and I have had a very long-term heart for missions and for reaching into the world. In fact, it was our intention to go as missionaries ourselves, probably to Africa. And we actually spoke to a missions director in Africa who wanted us to come and fulfill the position that we were children's ministers at the time. And he wanted us to go to Africa, and we wanted to go to Africa. We really felt like that's what we were supposed to do. But every time we would sit down to fill out the paperwork, we would both hear God saying, no, no. And it broke our heart, and we cried. Most people would be like, I didn't really want to go there anyway. But it broke our hearts because we really wanted to go to Africa as missionaries, and we were never able to do that. But we never lost our heart and our vision to see the world won for Christ. And while staying here in the United States, we have raised a lot of money for missions. And with our former organization that we were with, we raised thousands of dollars. We were known at our headquarters for the amount of money that we raised to help our missionaries. So we never lost sight of that. And some of the people that were in our ministry underneath us or in the churches became missionaries. And some of the kids that we were children's pastors to are now children's pastors. And some of them are also senior pastors. So we know that we did what God called us to do. But that's why he wanted me to speak today, is because I really do, both of us really do have a heart for what happens to our world and making sure that not just here, but that everywhere people have an opportunity to hear the gospel. So I'm going to start with Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where it says, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." So there's actually kind of like a ring of this. If you look at a map, you will see that like Jerusalem is right in the center. And then there's Judea and Samaria, and then the ends of the earth. And our church has done a good job of ministering in Jerusalem, which is right here in our church. You know, one of his sermons, Pastor Harold put together a video clip saying thank you to all the many workers that are in our church. And that's our Jerusalem, is right here. And we can't function without your help. If we don't have children's workers, and we don't have worship leaders, and we don't have ushers, and we don't have greeters, and all the different areas that we have, we can't function. So we need that in our Jerusalem. Our Judea and Samaria is right here in North Liberty. That's our area. That's where we reach out to. We're involved in the food pantry. We have the work day coming up on October the 4th. We did our block party. We've done some things at North Bend Elementary that's right here over to the side of us. And so we have done things to reach into our community. Now, the one thing that we have not done a lot of is reaching out to the rest of the world. That's not right here local for us. And that's something that we want to change. And we want to start reaching out to our world. So, one of the ways that we're going to do that is I also want to read to you from Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, where it says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men." So, we are called to be the salt here. We are called to be the salt in North Liberty. We are called to be salt to the whole world. Now, first off, before I tell you about my salt, I want to tell you how not to be salt. I had a little experience on Thursday at my church. At my store. Some of you know I manage a women's clothing store. And women come and leave clothes in the fitting room. That's not a problem. We want you to leave it there because we know where it goes, so we can put it back where it belongs. But I went into this fitting room to clean it out, and the fitting room was trashed. They had just pulled the shirts off, left them wrong side out, wadded them up, thrown them on the bench. It happens, but as I'm scooping it up, underneath that scoop of all these piles of clothes is a witnessing track. You've just trashed my fitting room, and you want me to come to know Jesus. That salt lost its flavor. It left a nasty taste in my mouth, and I grabbed that track and I hid it in my pocket because I don't want my staff to see it. Because they didn't have the right to witness. They lost that right. They lost their flavor. It was gross. It was nasty, and I didn't want it. I hid the witnessing track, and they did not see it. Because we're supposed to add flavor to our world. We're supposed to make it better, not worse. And you know, as my husband's been preaching about, we are to live to serve. Well, this person just said to me in big old neon lights, "You are here to serve me." That was disrespectful to me, to my staff. So I'm just telling you, don't do that. Also, don't leave your waitress a tip of a track instead of money. A better waitress, don't do it. Don't go into the stores on Sunday and assume that because they're working, they're not Christians. So you're going to give them a witnessing track so that they can come to Jesus. You know what? If you're not in that store on Sunday and nobody shopped on Sundays, the stores wouldn't be open on Sundays. So if you're shopping or eating out, and I do those things on Sundays, don't mistreat the people at the store and assume they're not believers, because some of you probably know I have to work my fair share of Sundays at my store. So some Sundays I'm not here because I'm at work, and trust me, I love God. So anyway, that's my little soapbox about being salt on that. So one of the things I want to talk about salt too is it's different. I have my kosher salt. Now I know that kosher salt, you have to add a little bit of extra kosher salt to get the saltiness that you want, because it has a different flavor. Sea salt. I have my little container of sea salt. It has a different flavor. Then I have my good old-fashioned iodized table salt, which is just a health note. If you're not buying salt with iodine in it, you should, because your thyroid needs it. Spoken like a person who has a thyroid no more. So they're different. And we are supposed to be the salt of the world, and I'm not like you, and you're not like me, and many of you, and I'm not like her. But anyway, we're all different, but God uses us for different purposes. And one of the ways that He uses us for different purposes is some of us go, some of us stay, and all of us pray. Okay? So, while my husband and I didn't get to go to Africa, we have helped send others, we've prayed for them, we've supported them, and we're going to continue to do that sort of thing. So He uses us all different. But there is some very common things about all of the salt, and that is it should add flavor. It should add a good flavor. If you take just a plain egg white and you don't put any salt on it, it's kind of flat. And a lot of our foods, just if you cook your pasta and you cook your potatoes and you don't put salt in it then, you can salt and salt and salt once it's cooked, but it's never quite the same as if you cook with that salt in there. So it's meant to add flavor. The other thing that you can do with salt is you can actually preserve things with salt. I remember as a kid growing up in the country that one time we made our own bacon and we did not refrigerate it because it was packed in salt to age it and turn it into bacon, and it didn't spoil. Now, the bacon you buy in the store, if you don't put it in the refrigerator, it's going to spoil, but that bacon didn't spoil, and we cut slices off of it for a long time. But that salt kept it preserved. And we as Christians are supposed to be preserving this world. How many of you know we live in a wicked world? Okay? It's becoming a very scary world, and I think it's becoming scarier by the day, and I think that sometimes we forget that in the United States, our opportunity to add the flavor and to help preserve is getting harder and harder. Christians are one of the few people that it's left that it's still politically correct to make fun of us, and it's politically correct to make us look like all the crazies and all the bad guys on TV. Just watch. When you watch the movies, watch and see who the crazies are. They're Christians. So it's politically okay to still do that to us. But we are here to preserve. The other thing that we should do is, how many of you know when you eat something really salty, you get really thirsty? Okay? It makes you want to drink. The Bible tells us that Jesus is the living water, that if we drink of him, we will thirst no more. So we should be out there making the world thirsty for Christ, because he is the living water, and we need to make the world thirsty. We don't make them thirsty when we do things like leaving tracks and moving a pile of clothes. Okay? We make them think that they don't ever need to drink the water again. So we want to be doing that. We want to help preserve the world. We want to help make them thirsty for Christ. We want them to see that there's something different in us. And each and every one of us has got to do our part. Now I want to read you another verse out of James. That one's not on my PowerPoint. But James chapter 2, verse 14 says, "What good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him, 'Go, I wish you well, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about his physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." We need to put some action to our faith so that others can see the salt. And there's several things that, and my section is short. You may think, aha, get out here early. We're not going to be done with you this early. But I've got some action things that I need you guys to do for us. First off, I've got some things I want you to pray about. One of the people that Harold and I ministered to when they were teenagers is now a missionary in a Muslim country. I won't tell you their names because they are not there technically as missionaries. Because if they get found out, best case scenario, they'll get deported. We know in some of these countries that would be the best case scenario, is that they would simply deport them. And they have been there for several years. And after 3 years, they finally earned the right to pray with a Muslim couple who are suffering from infertility. They still have not come to Christ, but it took them 3 years to even get the right to pray with them. That's why I said we forget how hard it is in other countries. They have cooking schools. I'm friends with them on Facebook, and I see pictures all the time of all these Muslim people coming to learn to cook. And they are winning and earning the right to tell them about Christ and earning their trust. So I look at those pictures and, well, it looks like they're just over there having a really good time. They're there for a purpose, and we need to pray for these people. So I'm going to ask you to pray for these missionaries whose names I won't tell you because they need to be protected. But they need God's protection, and they need God's help, and they need his encouragement. Because when my husband has spoke with them, they get very discouraged because it's such a slow process to win these people to Christ. And yet, we know that they need to be won to Christ. Also, and this isn't in a foreign country, but my daughter has a little girl in her church who is 8 years old. She's the same age as my 8-year-old grandson that's in their church in Des Moines. She's just been diagnosed with liver cancer. And this little girl's mother actually came from India, and because of the religion that she was with, she lost her entire family. Because when she came out as a believer, they will no longer have anything to do with her. So she does not have the support of her extended family, and we don't know what the prognosis for this little girl is. But her name is Priscilla, and she needs your prayers. She's only 8, and her mom and dad need your prayers too. The other thing is that sometimes we need to give, and we need to dig into our pockets. You know, a lot of us spend a lot of money on things like coffee and pop and potato chips and things that maybe are not essential to our life and well-being. Although I have to tell you, I think sometimes my pop, I think, is essential. But it's really not essential to our being. So sometimes we need to sacrificially give to help people in other countries to be able to come and know Christ. And we actually have a family in our church that is going to be doing that next year. And we are going to want to support them financially and with our prayers. So we're going to ask Matt Eckhart to come up here, and he is going to be presenting what they are going to be doing.
we are the Eckharts. I know that some of us wanted to introduce ourselves.
Hi, my name is James, and I'm in 3rd grade, and I just think this church is pretty cool. Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm in 1st grade.
We have been in North Liberty area for about 6 years, and we've been attending Heartland for about 5 years. Finally found that a year after we had been here. But we have been kind of, this was brought to our attention, and Matt's going to fill you in on all of the details, because we really did most of the light work. I got the emails from him, but he did this part. So, but we just kind of got this tugging our heart. Well, I got it a while ago, thinking, we really should go out and kind of tell people what we believe as well. And this opportunity was brought to my attention, so I will let Matt take it from there.
Hello, everybody. Like Heidi said, there's a recipe for cinnamon rub lamb chops. That sounds So, I will try to keep this short. It's Sunday, Bears Packers at noon, so we get it out of here. They go Cowboys. Not even. I'm a little nervous, which is surprising because usually when I get up here, I can just rip through announcements like it's nothing. But they say to picture your audience in their underwear. But my mother is with us today, so that's not going to happen. So like I said, we've been in North Liberty for about 5-6 years. We moved here from Champaign, Illinois. Die-hard fan, sorry. But you were born and raised there, so that's your team. We moved here about 5-6 years ago for my job. I work for the city of Iowa City. And it's kind of ironic that we're doing something with water because I'm kind of a water guy. That's what I do. So the fact that part of our mission trip has a lot to do with water just kind of all plays together. So we'll kind of get started, and like I said, I'll try to go through this pretty fast, but I had something that I really wanted to share, and I felt like God was really putting on us to and if I get away from here, I'll try to speak loud, but sometimes I get a little enthusiastic. So I apologize for any tangents, ADD, or jokes that are just kind of barely church appropriate. So, So let's go ahead and rip in. We're going to talk a little bit about perspective, and Patty kind of went into this a little bit, so we can go ahead and go to the first slide. A lot of times what we consider to be problems aren't necessarily real problems, but these are some things that kind of pull on me sometimes. Like, you don't have enough dip for your chips, but if I open another container, I won't have enough chips for my dip. Everybody had that experience? Yes, Matt, thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. So people brought hot food to your house. We kind of get caught up and think, well, what are we going to do for it? Let's just order pizza, or let's go grab something real quick. And we'll get into a little bit of this later, but many people can't. That's not even a concept. It's just so foreign. But for us, it's every day. And it's not even a question of let's go get something to eat. It's like, well, what do we want to eat? Or we go to a restaurant like, well, what are we going to get here? So let's go to the next one. They keep getting like this. I left my remote on the other side. It's so sad. So sad. Anybody remember not having a remote? I know my parents were. Somebody go, yeah, I remember the little wrench in the TV. So let's go to the next one. My roommate ate a hot dog without a bun. Now I have an on-eating ratio. Why do they sell them in different companies? That doesn't make sense. So anyway, that's more on Oscar Mayer than anybody else. My wife thought this one was really funny. So that's why I use 2 in 1. All at the same time. All at the same time. So before we get to the next one, I kind of have a quick quick story. We went camping. We were fortunate enough to borrow my neighbor's RV. This was about 3 weeks ago. And we were under a little bit of miscommunication because when we reserved this campsite, we thought, you know, it's an RV. She said, oh yeah, but it's our own neighbor, blah, blah, blah. Long story how we found the site. But anyway, so yeah, bring the camper up. They have hookups and all this sorts of stuff that, you know, an RV, glamping as we call it. We don't camp. That's crazy. Sorry, campers. Sorry. Like I said, so we get to this site and there is a power hookup, but it's not what I would consider an RV site. It's very primitive in its setup. There was literally one toilet for this entire campground. And when I mean like one toilet, I don't mean like one bathroom where we had multiple stalls. There was one commode for this, and there was probably a good 40, 50 people camping up there. So like at 7:30 in the morning, you'd see a line out front of the, and everybody's going there for the same reason, folks. We all do it. If you're first in line, you're golden. If you're last in line, you're like, oh, it's gross, but at least I got all the time in the world. If you're in the middle, nah, cool. So anyway, moving on. So water, right? Thanks. Water. So we had the tank, the freshwater tank that was in the RV, and it holds so much water. Well, we thought there would be a fresh water hookup, you know, just with the hose up tank, we got city water. No, there was probably 12 of us camping just within our group that was there with us. My brother, his kids, and my brother has he's like a lady in those shoes, kids all over the place. So and the reason I share this story is I got to thinking as we're going through this process, there's a limited amount of resources. There's a small thing of water, and there's all of us that are there. And every action that we do without even thinking about it, we had to be very conscious about our usage, how much water we use when we brush our teeth, when we flush the toilet, when we do the dishes, we're cooking with it, because we only have so much. And so really, and then from there, I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. It's like, when you go home, and how many leave the sink on when they brush their teeth? You know, little things like that, or taking, man, I tell you what, a shower in January, like a hot shower in January, just let the hot water run out. Is that not like the sweetest thing in the world? I mean, it's so nice, but you don't even think about doing it. So we get into this process, and the whole time I'm measuring the tank, making sure that we don't run out of water. And there are people around the world that run out of water every single day, where it is a constant fight. It's a constant fight. Where am I going to get a drink of water? For us, that's so foreign. It's so just not even the radar of thought. So let's go to the next slide. These are actual pictures that were taken at the Dominican, where we're going to go and do it's a living water project, and we'll get into the kind of details of what it does. But there's a couple of pictures. This is, I see them in black and white. I think it's in color up here, but you can see the trash, and that's water supply, folks. That's where people go, and it's not like it's pumped out of there. It's buckets that you go get it and bring it back with you. And so raw sewage, trash, whatever else may be, that's what's used for consumption. Let's go to the next picture. So more than 3 million people die each year from water-related disease. And what's really unfortunate about that is that it's 100% preventable. It doesn't have to take place. There are ways with technology that we have now that we can prevent this sort of thing. We can provide this for people who really desperately need it. Go to the next one. So more than 1 billion people lack access to affordable, clean water for, like I said, drinking, bathing, and hygiene. 1 billion people, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. So I'm going to share a quick story, a little bit of scripture here. This is, give me a moment to kind of read through it. It's Isaiah 6, 1 through 13. And if you've ever read through Isaiah, some of it gets a little out there just because a lot of it's visionary type stuff. So this is Isaiah's vision. He's at the throne itself, and he's just picturing what's going on, and God's putting this vision into it. So above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 that they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is filled with his glory. And at the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. This is Isaiah. Woe to me, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among the people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. I can just picture him humbling himself at the foot of God. And this is a person who lives amongst us. He's a regular dude. But he's at, I mean, I imagine, it's hard to put into words, and I think that's what he's trying to do. One of the seraphim flew to me with live coal in his hand, which he had taken from the tongs from the altar. With it touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. Send me, he says. Speaking directly to God, please send me. He says, Go and tell this to the people. Be ever hearing but never understanding. Be ever seeing but not perceiving. Make the heart of this people callous. Make their ears dull and close their eyes. Otherwise they may see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, For how long? How long shall I go? And he answered, Until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are left desolate and the fields ruined and ravaged, until the Lord has sent everyone far away and the land is utterly forsaken. That's forever. That's how long we should go and preach the word. That's how long we should go and take it to the people. As long as it takes. As long as it takes for the mission to be done and for the work to be done. James. So James is going to share a couple of scripture verses with us.
Matthew 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole inhabited earth as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. Mark 16:15. He said to them, Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. John 12:26. If anyone wants to serve me, he must follow me, and where I am, my servant will be too. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him.
Nice job. So Acts 20:18-21. This is Paul. And if you want to read about any one person in the Bible, Paul is a great place to start, because Paul not only was a non-believer, but he was. I wish we could just change our names and all that. That would change it. You know, from Saul to Paul. I decided to follow Jesus. My heart is pure. I'm going to change my name and move on. Well, we can't really do that quite as easily as they did. So when they arrived, he said to them, and now he's speaking to the elders of Ephesus when he's leaving the Macedonia area and returning to Jerusalem. And I can imagine after being, spreading the news for so long, throughout the ends of the earth, he goes home to Jerusalem. And where he left as a Jew and now is converted. So I can imagine how nervous he might have been to do that. So when they arrived, he said to them, You yourselves know how I lived the whole time I was with you. From the first day I set foot in the province of Asia, served the Lord with all humility and with tears and with all the trials that have happened to me because of the plots of the Jews. You know now that I did not hold back from proclaiming to you anything that would be helpful, and from teaching you publicly and from house to house, testifying to both Jews and Greeks about the repentance toward God and faith in our Lord Jesus. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I am going to Jerusalem without knowing what will happen to me there, except that the Holy Spirit warns me in town after town that imprisonment and persecutions are waiting for me. Would we be willing to do that? Would we be willing to follow God that faithfully, where you know that you're going to jail, or you know you will be persecuted? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what our project is. It's called the Living Water Project. It's done through, there's a couple of different organizations that kind of partner up to do this. So go ahead and go to the next slide for me. So this is a map of the Dominican Republic, most likely known for Sammy Sosa, a few other baseball players. James was really excited when he found out about how much baseball because he was really decent. But our specific location is just outside of Santo Domingo. It's a small little village where we'll kind of get into details about what the project is. About 2.5 million of the country's 10 million residents live in the capital of San Francisco, and the average annual income is $5,000. So not a lot of money. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So there's three main goals in this project. One is promote access to the gospel of Jesus. Not just spreading the word, but promoting access to it, where we can galvanize the local population to spread the word as well. Because it is a large, mostly Roman Catholic, so bringing Jesus to them is not a new concept, but promoting the access to it is. So, I'll just read through it. Do the intense focus on personal survival. Many of the DR, the Dominican Republic's impoverished people, do not reach out to their local churches. Because of this, there's a great opportunity to bring life-saving gospel of Jesus to people who are not normally exposed to his message. So that's number one, Jesus. Two is to improve health. The waterworks system is a filtration system, and it's funny, when I was reading through this, like, oh yeah, that makes sense, that works, that's a lot of what we use. So, and June's not here, she's back. She would love this too, she works for the water department. So by improving health and installing this filtration system, it eliminates water-related deaths and illnesses, increases personal income due to less time caring for sick or worrying about illnesses or paying for illnesses and treatments. Dramatically reduces medical expenses, increases school attendance in children, and increases engagement with the local church. And the way that they increase engagement with the local church is when they install these systems, they do so at the local churches. So folks have to come to that church to get fresh water. This is the actual system itself. I couldn't figure out how to embed a YouTube video. I tried, didn't think I'd be able to do that. I think my age and technology and paradigm, the older you get, farther away you get. It's starting to happen. So anyway, it's a 5-tank filtration system. It works on charcoal filters and also has a UV apparatus that helps kill off all the bacteria. It's really not that expensive of a system for the installation. It's more of the maintenance afterwards. And how do we train those local people to utilize that system, to take care of that system, and to maintain it after the mission is gone. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. Creating economic sustainability. Creating economic sustainability. The business model focuses on supporting individual human dignity by creating economic empowerment. So that's what we're kind of talking about, how we go in, we set the system up, we train the locals how to use it, and how they can bring it to the people, so to speak. And a lot of that, so kind of moving down to the last one, the funds earned from the sale of the local water are used to maintain the filtration equipment and provide for other needed community improvement projects. So the churches where it gets installed, they do charge for that usage, but we charge for water here too, because there's an expense to it. It takes time, you have to maintain the system, and then the local church can use that money to fund some of its missions as well. So, okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So last slide, of course we have the total cost, because it's not free. The cost is about $1,600 per person. That includes airfare and everything else that's associated with it. So we're a family of 4, I think that's supposed to say $6,400. So, yeah. I'm a recreation and water guy. So we're looking at about $6,400, and we're not going to ask for a dime today. We just wanted to introduce it and let you know that this is where we're going. This is where God has put us. And for those of you that I know very well and who know me very well, this is an extremely foreign concept for me to do this, to kind of bite this off. But we prayed about it, we thought a lot about it. When we started getting into the details, everything just started to click. And we could really tell that God was like, yep, it's time to go. So, I guess, and we all can go, that's right. That was a big part of it, was that we wanted to,
We didn't really practice who was going to say what. But no, we really wanted to introduce our children to this concept as well. They hear us throughout, and they see us doing our devotionals and praying together. We do our devotional in the morning. morning, but they've never really had the opportunity to go out and speak to other. And I know that he's had some issues and some, kind of getting nervous about talking to people because we do Awana here on Wednesdays, and you have to invite friends or tell friends memory verses, and it's kind of scary. I grew up and I was a PK, I was a pastor's kid, and it was on the East Coast, and it's a little different feel than the Midwest. So if you ever talk about God, they're like, oh gosh, I don't listen to this. So they walk away from you, and I actually lost friends being a Christian. And so for a long time, it took me a lot to even, and I still tell Adam, I don't pray in front of people. So it's a lot for me to get out there, and so I think this was one way. It's a little easier because you don't have that first world dynamic. So we are learning, they're more receptive to hearing it sometimes in the third world country, which is bad to say, but it's a little easier. And so I thought maybe not knowing any of their friends, they could get that initial, this is how we talk to people about God. And I just love the idea that, of course, it was water, and we're bringing stuff in, and we're also ministering. There's different opportunities throughout the week that we're down there, that we get to go to different age groups, to the orphanage, and to be able to talk to everybody. And so we're getting over all of our initial freak out about sharing God. So we were just trying to be, this is going to bring us as a family to learn how to do this. So I wanted the kids mainly to learn this first.
That's kind of the whole process in a nutshell. Our time frame is next December, January. There's about a 4-week span where we can go for a week. So we have to kind of decide what week we want to do it and what's going to work. So it's about a year, a little under a year and a half out. So a lot of work to do between now and then, but when you're doing it for the Lord, it's not real work. It's just you get on fire for something and you just run with it because that's what you're supposed to do. And I find that when we discover something like that, and maybe you probably felt the same way, if you're not doing that work, it doesn't feel right. It's just like it's not clicking. And then when you're doing the Lord's work, it's easy. Even though it doesn't matter how hard it is, it's easy. So at this time, I guess we just ask for prayer. If you have a few moments and you can pray for our process. Pray for the process and as we go through it.
Can I add one more thing that I forgot to tell you before? My husband said that the church is going to set up a designated account for that Mighty mission trip. So if you do want to donate towards it, if you designate that, it will get put towards your trip. So we are getting our funding too.
Nice.
James has one more thing he wants to share, and then we'll some more business.
Have a good week.